The rain falls against the window of the small church dressing room, and Clara Mitchell stares at her reflection in the cracked mirror. 26 years old, a simple white dress borrowed from her mother's closet, hands trembling as she adjusts the thin veil covering her face. This is not the wedding she dreamed of as a little girl. This is not the man she imagined standing at the altar. But desperation has a way of rewriting every fairy tale into something unrecognizable. She can hear the murmur of voices outside. Fewer than 20 people gathered in the wooden pews. No flowers except for a single arrangement her younger sister managed to salvage from a grocery store clearance bin. No music, except for the old organ played by an elderly woman who volunteers at the church on weekends. Everything about this moment feels borrowed, temporary, fragile. Her mother appears in the doorway, her face a careful mask of composure. Eleanor Mitchell has spent the last 3 months pretending that everything is fine, that their family isn't drowning in debt left behind by Clara's father before he disappeared, that they haven't received the eviction notice, that Clara's younger sister Emma isn't facing the possibility of losing her chance at college because every penny has been swallowed by creditors. "He's waiting," her mother says quietly. "Are you ready?" Clara wants to laugh. Ready? She doesn't even know the man she's about to marry. She met Dominic Corsetti exactly 4 times before today. 4 brief formal meetings arranged by her mother's old friend who claimed to know someone who could help their family. A business arrangement, they called it. A practical solution. Dominic needs a wife for reasons Clara doesn't fully understand. Something about family expectations, about an image he needs to present. In exchange, he will pay off every debt threatening to destroy her family. He will ensure Emma's education. He will give them enough to start over. The terms were simple. 1 year of marriage. She would live in his home, play the role of his wife in public, and in return, her family would be free. After 12 months, a quiet divorce. She would walk away with enough money to build a new life, and he would have fulfilled whatever obligation drove him to this arrangement. She never asked why. She was too afraid the answer would make her run. "Clara," her mother's voice is gentle but firm, "you don't have to do this. We can find another way." But they both, "No, that's not true." They've exhausted every option. Clara has worked 2 jobs for the past year and still couldn't make a dent in what they owe. The bank refused their loan applications. The creditors have stopped being patient. In 3 weeks, they will lose the house where Clara grew up, where Emma still sleeps in the room with the faded purple walls. "I'm ready," Clara says, and the words taste like goodbye. The walk down the aisle takes forever. She keeps her eyes fixed on the worn carpet, counting her steps, refusing to look at the man waiting at the end. When she finally reaches the altar and raises her gaze, she finds dark eyes watching her with an expression she cannot read. Dominic Corsetti is tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit that probably costs more than everything Clara owns. His face is angular, striking in a severe way, with a jaw that suggests stubbornness and a mouth that doesn't seem designed for smiling. He is handsome in the way that storms are beautiful. Dangerous. Commanding. The kind of man who walks into a room and changes its gravity. The priest begins to speak, and Clara's mind drifts. She catches fragments of phrases about love and commitment, about promises made before God. None of it feels real. This is a contract, not a covenant, a transaction dressed in white. When it's time for the vows, Dominic's voice is low and certain. He speaks the words without hesitation, without emotion, like he's signing a document rather than binding his life to hers. Clara's voice, in contrast, trembles. She stumbles over the promises, her throat tight, her eyes burning with tears she refuses to let fall. And then it's done. The priest pronounces them husband and wife. Dominic doesn't kiss her. He simply takes her hand, and his grip firm, impersonal, and leads her back down the aisle. The reception, if it can be called that, takes place in the church's small fellowship hall. Stale cookies and punch. Awkward conversation among people who don't quite understand what they've witnessed. Clara's mother cries quietly in a corner. Emma, 16 years old and far too perceptive, watches Dominic with suspicious eyes. An hour later, Clara finds herself in the passenger seat of a black sedan, driving through rain-slicked streets toward a part of the city she's never seen. Dominic hasn't spoken since they left the church. His driver, a man with silver hair and watchful eyes, navigates the roads with practiced ease. "Where are we going?" Clara finally asks, her voice small in the silence. "Home," Dominic says. Nothing more. The word should comfort her. Instead, it feels like a door closing. The house appears through the rain like something from another century. A mansion, really, hidden behind high walls and iron gates that open automatically as the car approaches. Clara counts the windows as they pull into the circular driveway. 12 on the first floor alone. The structure is stone and shadow, ivy climbing its eastern walls, the kind of place that holds secrets in its very foundation. Inside, the grandeur continues. Marble floors, chandeliers that scatter light like fallen stars, a sweeping staircase that curves toward upper floors she cannot see. Everything is immaculate, expensive, and utterly cold. A woman appears from somewhere to the left, older, perhaps in her 60s, with grey hair pulled back severely, and a face that reveals nothing. "Mrs. Corsetti," she says to Clara. "I'm Margaret. I manage the household. Your rooms are prepared." Your rooms, plural. Clara glances at Dominic, but he's already walking away, his footsteps echoing on the marble. No explanation, no reassurance. She follows Margaret up the staircase and down a long hallway lined with closed doors until they reach a suite at the far end. The rooms are beautiful. A sitting area with a fireplace, a bedroom with a 4-poster bed draped in white linens, a bathroom with a tub large enough to swim in, windows that overlook what appears to be an extensive garden, now invisible in the darkness and rain. "Mr. Corsetti's rooms are at the opposite end of the hall," Margaret says, and Clara understands. Separate spaces, separate lives. This is not a marriage. It's an arrangement of proximity. "Thank you," Clara manages. Margaret nods and leaves, closing the door softly behind her. Alone, Clara sinks onto the edge of the bed. Her wedding dress feels heavy, suffocating. She wants to tear it off, but her fingers are shaking too badly to manage the buttons. Instead, she sits in the silence, listening to the rain, trying to understand how her life arrived at this moment. She doesn't know how long she stays there before the knock comes, soft, almost hesitant. When she opens the door, she finds Dominic standing in the hallway, his jacket removed, his sleeves rolled to his elbows. "We should talk," he says. Clara steps aside to let him in, her heart pounding. He moves to the window, staring out at the darkness, his back to her. "I want to be clear about expectations," he begins. "This arrangement benefits both of us. You needed financial security for your family. I needed a wife. For the next year, we will present a united front to the outside world. You will attend certain events with me. You will play the role convincingly. In return, I will ensure your family's debts are cleared by the end of the week." "And in private?" Clara asks. He turns to face her. "In private, we live our own lives. I won't make demands of you. Clara, your rooms are yours. Your time when not required for appearances is your own. I ask only for discretion and cooperation." It sounds reasonable. It sounds almost kind. But something in his eyes tells her there are things he's not saying. Shadows behind the carefully constructed words. "Why?" she hears herself ask. "Why do you need a wife? You could have anyone. Why this arrangement?" For a moment, something flickers across his face. Pain, perhaps, or anger. It disappears before she can name it. "Everyone has their reasons," he says. "Mine are my own." He moves toward the door and Clara realizes he's leaving. On their wedding night, he's walking away without another word, without explanation, without even a pretense of intimacy. Dominic. His name feels foreign on her tongue. He pauses, hand on the doorknob. "What have I married into?" The question hangs in the air. He doesn't turn around. "You married safety, Clara. For you and your family. That's all you need to know." And then he's gone. Clara stands in the center of her beautiful empty room, tears finally sliding down her cheeks. She accepted this separation. she agreed to this arrangement. But standing alone on her wedding night, surrounded by luxury she didn't earn, and silence she didn't expect, she feels the weight of everything she doesn't understand pressing down on her chest. She doesn't know that her husband runs an empire built in shadows. She doesn't know that the men who drove them here are soldiers in a war fought without uniforms. She doesn't know that Dominic Corsetti is the head of one of the most powerful families on the eastern seaboard, that his name is spoken in whispers, that his word is law in circles she cannot imagine. All she knows is that she is alone, and the rain keeps falling, and somewhere in this vast house a stranger wears her ring. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel. This story is just beginning, and the secrets waiting in the shadows will change everything. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. 3 weeks pass in a blur of routine and avoidance. Clara learns the rhythms of the house, the way one learns a new language, slowly, imperfectly, with constant fear of making mistakes. She wakes each morning to silence. Breakfast appears on a tray outside her door. Fresh fruit, pastries, coffee so rich it must cost more than her old weekly grocery budget. She eats alone in her sitting room, watching the garden emerge from morning mist, wondering what Dominic is doing on his end of the house. They see each other rarely. Twice she has passed him in the hallway, and both times he has simply nodded, polite, distant, as if she were a guest rather than his wife. Once, she heard his voice drifting up from somewhere below, speaking Italian to someone on the phone, and she realized with sudden clarity that she knows almost nothing about the man she married. Margaret serves as her primary contact with the household. The older woman is efficient and courteous, but reveals nothing personal. When Clara asks about Dominic's work, Margaret simply says he has business interests. When Clara asks about the other staff, she has glimpsed at least 4 others moving through the house. Margaret explains they handle security and logistics. Security. The word feels heavy. Clara has noticed the cameras mounted discreetly in corners, the way certain doors require codes to open, the men who patrol the perimeter of the property. For a businessman, Dominic Corsetti seems remarkably well protected. On the 4th day, Clara decides she cannot spend another hour in her rooms. She dresses in the clothes that appeared in her closet, expensive, tasteful, clearly selected for her, and ventures downstairs to explore. The house reveals itself in pieces, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books in multiple languages, a formal dining room she has never seen used, a kitchen so modern it looks like something from a magazine, staffed by a woman named Rosa, who smiles warmly and offers Clara fresh bread. And then, behind a door she almost passes, an office. The door is ajar. Inside, she can see dark wood furniture, a massive desk, and walls covered with photographs and documents. Her curiosity pulls her forward before caution can stop her. The photographs are formal, men in suits, handshakes, ceremonies. She recognizes Dominic in several, always at the center, always commanding. But there are older photos too. A man who looks like an older version of Dominic, his father perhaps, standing with other men in what appears to be a restaurant. Images of gatherings that look almost ceremonial. On the desk, papers are spread in organized chaos. Clara's eye catches a name, Corsetti Holdings. Beneath it a list of companies she doesn't recognize. Real estate, shipping, import and export. The scope is staggering. "You shouldn't be in here." Clara spins. Dominic stands in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," she stammers. "The door was open. I was just exploring." He steps into the room, and suddenly the space feels smaller. "It's your home too now, but this room is private." "I understand." Clara moves toward the door, eager to escape, but his voice stops her. "Wait." She turns. Dominic studies her for a long moment. Something in his gaze seems to be making a decision. "You've been here 3 weeks. You must have questions." "Hundreds," Clara admits before she can stop herself. "A ghost of something, amusement?" crosses his face. "Ask one. What do you actually do?" The directness surprises her, as much as it seems to surprise him. He gestures to a chair, and after a moment's hesitation, Clara sits. Dominic moves behind his desk but doesn't sit himself. Instead, he leans against it, arms crossed. "I manage my family's interests," he says carefully. "We have investments in many areas. Some of them are complicated. Some of them require discretion." "That's not an answer. It's the answer I can give you." Clara feels frustration rising. "I'm your wife, legally at least. Don't I have a right to know?" "What you have a right to is safety," Dominic interrupts, "which I've provided. Comfort, financial security for your family, those were the terms. Anything beyond that is not part of our arrangement." The words sting more than they should. She stands abruptly. "You're right, I forgot my place." She's almost to the door when he speaks again. "Clara." Something in his tone makes her pause. When she looks back, the hardness in his expression has cracked just slightly. "It's not about your place," he says quietly. "It's about your safety. The less you know about certain things, the safer you are. Do you understand?" She doesn't, not really, but she nods anyway and leaves him standing in his office of secrets. That night, Clara cannot sleep. She lies in her vast bed, staring at the ceiling, turning his words over in her mind. The less, the safer you are. What kind of business requires that level of protection? What kind of life? Around midnight, she hears something, a car engine, voices below her window. She rises and moves to the glass, peering down into the darkness. 3 black SUVs are parked in the driveway. Men are emerging from them, 6, 7, 8 men in dark suits, moving with purpose toward the house. In the center of the group, she sees Dominic. Even from above, she can recognize his posture, his authority. He is speaking to one of the men, gesturing sharply, and then she sees it. Just for a moment, caught in the light from the house's entrance, one of the men is carrying something, a case, black and rectangular, the kind she has only seen in movies when people carry things they don't want others to see. Her heart begins to pound. She watches until the men disappear inside, until the cars fall silent, until the night settles back into uneasy quiet. But sleep doesn't come for hours, and when it finally does, she dreams of shadows and secrets and doors she is afraid to open. The next morning brings a change. Clara wakes to find a note slipped under her door, written in a hand she recognizes from the marriage documents. "We have an event this Saturday evening, a charity gala. You will need to accompany me. Appropriate attire will be provided. D. The gala arrives with the weight of performance. Clara has spent the week preparing, or rather, being prepared. A stylist arrived from Manhattan with garment bags and shoeboxes. A hair specialist came to discuss options. A woman whose job seemed to be teaching elegance spent 2 hours reviewing the guest list, explaining who mattered and why. The dress selected for her is a deep burgundy, elegant without being ostentatious. When Clara sees herself in the mirror, she barely recognizes the woman staring back. She looks polished, sophisticated, like someone who belongs in the world she is about to enter. Dominic meets her at the bottom of the staircase. He is wearing a tuxedo that fits him like armor, and for a moment Clara forgets to breathe. He extends his arm without speaking, and she takes it. In the car, he finally addresses her. "There are rules for tonight. Stay close to me. Smile when introduced. Speak only in generalities about the charity, about the weather, about nothing of substance. If anyone asks about our relationship, we are happy, deeply in love. Understood?" "You want me to lie. I want you to perform." There's a difference. Clara wants to argue, but she recognizes the futility. She agreed to this role. Tonight, she plays it. The gala is held in a hotel ballroom so opulent it takes her breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast kaleidoscope light across hundreds of guests dressed in their finest. Waiters glide through the crowd with champagne. An orchestra plays something classical in the corner. And everyone seems to know Dominic Corsetti. Clara watches the reactions as they enter, the subtle straightening of postures, the careful rearranging of expressions, the way conversations pause as people track Dominic's movement through the room. This is not simple respect. This is something closer to reverence or fear. "Mr. Corsetti." A silver-haired man approaches with an extended hand. "What an honor to see you here. Senator Wallace." Dominic's handshake is brief, formal. "Allow me to introduce my wife, Clara." The senator's eyes widen slightly before he recovers. "I had no idea you'd married. Congratulations." His smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. "Mrs. Corsetti, a pleasure." This pattern repeats throughout the evening. Introduction after introduction. Business leaders, politicians, society figures. Everyone treats Dominic with a deference that borders on uncomfortable. And everyone seems surprised, shocked even, that he has a wife. During a rare moment alone by the champagne table, Clara catches a fragment of conversation from two women nearby. "That's her, the Corsetti wife. Apparently no one saw it coming. The man's been untouchable for years. She must not know. Look at her, completely innocent. Give it time. They all find out eventually." Clara's stomach turns. She sets down her glass, her hand trembling. "Clara." Dominic appears at her elbow. "Is something wrong?" "What don't I know?" The question comes out sharper than intended. What is everyone talking about? His expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes hardens. "We should go. Dominic, now." The drive back to the house is silent. Clara stares out the window at the passing city, her mind racing. When they arrive, she follows Dominic inside, refusing to be dismissed. "You promised me safety," she says to his back. "How can I be safe if I don't understand what I'm in the middle of?" He stops at the base of the staircase. For a long moment, he doesn't turn around. "My family has operated in this city for 3 generations, he finally says. "We built an empire, some of it legal, some of it not. I have spent the last 5 years trying to transition our operations into legitimacy. It's a slow process. It has made me enemies." Clara's breath catches. I'm saying that the name Corsetti carries weight. History, some of it dark." He turns to face her. "I married you because I needed a wife who had no connection to that world. Someone clean. Someone who could stand beside me as I tried to build something different. I never intended for you to be touched by any of it." "But I am touched by it," Clara whispers. "I'm your wife. In name. In law. In the eyes of everyone at that gala. In whatever danger your enemies might see me as." He has no response to that. The truth hangs between them, heavy and undeniable. "I'm going to bed," Clara finally says. "But this isn't over. You owe me more than half-truths, Dominic." She climbs the stairs without looking back. The following weeks bring an unexpected shift. Perhaps it's the conversation after the gala. Perhaps it's Clara's refusal to remain quietly ignorant. Whatever the cause, Dominic begins to share small pieces of himself. It starts with breakfast. One morning, Clara descends to the dining room to find him already there, reading a newspaper, a second-place setting arranged across from him. "I thought you might prefer company," he says without looking up. She sits. They eat in silence at first, but the silence feels different now. Less like distance and more like possibility. Over the following days, breakfast together becomes routine, then lunch occasionally, then evenings in the library, where he reads and she explores the shelves, discovering volumes in Italian and English, poetry and history, philosophy and fiction. "You read Dante in the original?" she asks one evening, finding a worn copy of La Divina Commedia. "My mother's favorite," he replies. "She used to read it to me as a child. She said that understanding hell was necessary to appreciate heaven. That sounds terrifying for a child. She believed in honesty." He pauses, even when it was difficult. Clara senses a door opening. What happened to her? The silence stretches so long she thinks he won't answer. Then, she was caught in crossfire. An old dispute between families that should have been settled years before. My father was devastated. I was 17. "I'm sorry." "It was the day I decided things had to change, that this life, this legacy, it couldn't continue the way it always had." He sets down his book. "That's why I've spent years trying to dismantle what my father built. to keep only the legitimate businesses, to bury the rest. Clara moves to sit closer to him. Is it working? Some days, others. He shakes his head. There are people who don't want to see the Corsetti name become respectable, who profit from the old ways. They make the transition difficult. The enemies you mentioned. Yes? She understands now why he guards his secrets so closely, why he built walls around himself high enough to touch the clouds. The guilt he carries isn't just for what his family has done, it's for what he hasn't yet been able to undo. Thank you for telling me, she says quietly. He looks at her, then really looks, and something passes between them that wasn't there before. Not love, not yet, but recognition, understanding. The first time Clara truly sees Dominic's world collide with her own happens on an ordinary Tuesday. She is in the garden, having discovered that the grounds behind the mansion are extensive and surprisingly peaceful. Roses bloom along stone pathways. A fountain murmurs in the distance. For a few hours each day, she can almost forget the strangeness of her situation. She is pruning dead blossoms from a climbing rose when she hears the commotion. Raised voices from the front of the house. The sound of car doors slamming. She moves toward the noise, curiosity overriding caution. From the corner of the house, she sees 3 men she doesn't recognize standing in the driveway. Dominic is facing them, his posture rigid, his voice low and controlled, but carrying an edge she has never heard before. The answer is no, he says. It was no last month. It will be no next month. This discussion is finished. The old man wouldn't have been so stubborn, one of the men replies. He's heavy-set, with a shaved head and a gold chain visible at his throat. Your father understood loyalty. My father is dead, and loyalty is earned, not demanded. The tension escalates. Clara can feel it from where she stands, hidden by the garden wall. Something bad is about to happen. She can sense it the way animals sense storms. And then one of the men turns and sees her. Well, he says, a smile spreading across his face that makes Clara's skin crawl. The mysterious wife. We've heard about you. Dominic's reaction is immediate. He steps between Clara's line of sight and the men, his body, becoming a barrier. Leave now. We're just being friendly, Dominic, introducing ourselves to the family. She is not part of this. She never will be. The heavy-set man laughs. Everything is part of this. You know that better than anyone. There's a moment when Clara thinks it might turn violent. The air crackles with unspoken threats. But then the men retreat, climbing back into their car, leaving only dust and silence behind. Dominic doesn't move until the vehicle disappears through the gates. Then he turns, and his face is a storm of emotions she cannot parse. Are you all right? He asks. Who were they? Men who haven't accepted the changes I'm trying to make. Men who prefer the old ways. He takes her arm, guiding her back toward the house. You shouldn't have been outside. I didn't know. I know, it's not your fault. His grip tightens slightly, then releases. But from now on, please stay inside the walls unless I'm with you. Can you do that? Clara nods, shaken in ways she doesn't fully understand. Those men looked at her like she was a piece on a chessboard, a vulnerability, a way to hurt Dominic. She realizes in that moment that her husband's enemies are now her enemies. Whether she wanted it or not, she has become part of a war she never agreed to fight. That night, Clara cannot stop thinking about what happened. She paces her room, replays the encounter, tries to understand the full scope of what she has married into. Finally, unable to bear the isolation any longer, she does something she has never done. She knocks on Dominic's door. He opens it immediately as if he was expecting her. He has removed his jacket and tie, his shirt open at the collar. Even in disarray, he commands presence. Come in, he says. His rooms are different from hers, darker, more personal. Books are stacked on nearly every surface. A chessboard sits frozen mid-game on a table by the window. The space smells faintly of cedar and something deeper, something distinctly him. I need to understand, Clara says, all of it, not just pieces, not just what you think I can handle. Dominic considers her for a long moment, then he moves to a cabinet, pours 2 glasses of something amber, and hands one to her. Sit, he says. And then he tells her. He tells her about the Corsetti family's history, 3 generations of power built on enterprises that straddled the line between legal and criminal. He tells her about his father's reign, marked by violence and expansion. He tells her about the day his mother died and how it shattered something in both him and his father. He tells her about inheriting leadership at 25, about the decision to transition the family into legitimacy, about the resistance he has faced from within and without. He tells her about the men she saw today, the Marchetti family, old rivals who have grown bolder as Dominic has tried to dismantle the empire they wish he would maintain. They want the Corsettis returned to power through any means necessary. They see my marriage as a sign of weakness, Dominic says, a distraction. They think I've grown soft. Have you? The question hangs between them. I've grown tired, he admits, of violence, of fear, of looking over my shoulder every moment of every day. He meets her eyes. I wanted something different, something clean. That's why I agreed to this arrangement. You represented a future I was trying to build. Clara feels the weight of that admission. She didn't ask to become a symbol of someone's redemption, but looking at Dominic now, seeing the exhaustion beneath his control, she understands that he didn't ask for this life either. He was born into it, shaped by it, and is doing everything in his power to escape it. I'm scared, she admits. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I'm here now, and I don't think I can just pretend none of this is happening. What do you want? He asks. Clara takes a breath. I want to understand. I want to be your partner in this, not just a prop for public appearances. If I'm going to be in danger regardless, I'd rather face it knowing the truth than be blindsided by it. Something shifts in Dominic's expression. Respect, perhaps, or surprise, or something warmer. All right, he says quietly. No more half-truths. From now on, you know what I know. It feels like a vow, perhaps more meaningful than the ones they spoke in that small church weeks ago. If you're feeling the tension of this moment, if Clara's courage is resonating with you, leave a comment saying, I would have asked for the truth too. Let's see how many of us would choose knowledge over ignorance. The weeks that follow transform Clara's understanding of her new life. True to his word, Dominic holds nothing back. He explains the structure of his organization, the legitimate businesses that form its public face, the ongoing negotiations to exit the remaining enterprises that operate in shadows. He introduces her to his inner circle, men and women who have stood by him through the transition, who believe in the vision of a different kind of legacy. Among them is Marco, Dominic's second-in-command and closest friend since childhood. Marco is everything Dominic is not: warm, quick to laugh, openly emotional. He takes to Clara immediately. Finally, Marco says when they meet. Someone to humanize this man. He's been a statue for too long. I heard that, Dominic replies from across the room. You were meant to? Their dynamic makes Clara smile. It's the first glimpse she's had of Dominic as something other than a controlled force. With Marco, he loosens, he jokes, he becomes almost approachable. She also meets Elena, who manages the family's charitable foundation, the legitimate heart of the Corsetti empire. Elena is polished, brilliant, and fiercely dedicated to using Corsetti resources for good. Every dollar we put into community programs is a dollar that proves we can be something different, Eleanor explains over lunch. Dominic understands that redemption isn't just about stopping the bad, it's about actively building good. Clara begins to see the shape of what Dominic is trying to create, a legacy not of fear, but of contribution, a name associated with hospitals and schools and scholarships rather than whispered warnings. The vision is ambitious, perhaps impossibly so. But it is genuine. More importantly, she begins to see Dominic himself more clearly. The man who stays up late, reviewing foundation proposals. The man who personally writes condolence letters to the families of employees who pass away. The man who visits his mother's grave every Sunday morning, rain or shine, and sits there for exactly 1 hour. The monster the world whispers about is not the man who shares breakfast with her each morning. The feared Corsetti heir is not the man who remembers how she takes her coffee after one mention, who notices when she seems tired and quietly adjusts their schedule, who has never once raised his voice in her presence. Clara feels herself falling, not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily. Like snow accumulating on a windowsill, so gradual you don't notice until everything is white. The shift in their relationship becomes undeniable on the night of the power outage. A storm rolls through the city, fierce enough to knock out electricity for miles. The mansion falls into darkness, backup generators providing only minimal light in the hallways. Clara is in the library when it happens. She sits frozen in the sudden black, heart-pounding, old fears from childhood rushing back. She has never liked the dark, has never been able to shake the anxiety that grips her when she cannot see. She doesn't know how Dominic finds her. Perhaps he was looking for her, perhaps he simply knew. Clara. His voice reaches her through the darkness. I'm here. She feels him sit beside her, not touching, just present. His warmth radiates through the space between them. I'm fine, she lies. You're trembling. She can't deny it. Her hands are shaking in her lap, her breath too quick. Tell me something, Dominic says. Anything. Focus on my voice. So she tells him. About her childhood fear of darkness, born from a night when her father forgot to pick her up from school, and she sat alone outside for hours as the sun set. About the way she still sleeps with a nightlight, even now. About the embarrassment of being a grown woman afraid of something so simple. He listens without judgment, and then in the darkness he shares something too. I'm afraid of losing control, he admits, of becoming my father. He was a good man in his way, but he made choices that cost lives. I'm terrified that one day I'll face a situation where the only option is to become him, that everything I've built will mean nothing in a single moment of weakness. Their confessions hang in the air, vulnerable and raw. Then Clara feels his hand find hers, tentative, warm, strong. They sit like that until the lights return. Neither of them mentions moving. Neither of them wants to break whatever fragile thing has formed between them. When the power finally hums back to life, flooding the library with sudden brightness, Clara looks at Dominic and finds him already watching her. There is something in his eyes that wasn't there before. Something that looks like hope. Thank you, she whispers. For what? For not leaving me alone in the dark. He lifts her hand to his lips and presses a kiss against her knuckles. The gesture is so tender, so unexpected, that Clara feels tears prick at her eyes. I will never leave you alone, he says. That is a promise I can keep. The evolution of their relationship doesn't go unnoticed. Margaret smiles more frequently. Marco begins making comments about wedding gifts arriving late. Even the household staff seems to warm, as though Clara's presence is softening something in the house itself. But it also draws unwanted attention. The Marchetti family has been quiet since the encounter in the driveway. Too quiet, according to Marco, who reports that their movements suggest planning rather than retreat. They're watching, he tells Dominic during a meeting Clara now attends, waiting for an opportunity. Your wife has changed the equation. They see her as leverage. Dominic's jaw tightens. Increase her security detail. No one gets close without clearance. Already done. But Dom, they're patient. And desperate people do desperate things. Clara feels the weight of that warning. She has become more than a symbol now. She has become a target. That night she confronts Dominic in his study. I don't want to be the reason something goes wrong, she says. If my presence is making things more dangerous. Your presence is the reason I'm still fighting, he interrupts. Before you, I was going through the motions, making plans without caring if they succeeded. You've given me something to protect, Clara. Something Worth protecting. Don't put that on me. I didn't ask to be your motivation. No, you just are. He stands, moves closer to her. Do you want to leave? If you want to walk away, I won't stop you. The terms of our arrangement allow for that. You've fulfilled your obligations. Clara should say yes. The smart choice, the safe choice, would be to take the money promised to her and disappear. Start a new life, far from shadows and secrets. But when she looks at Dominic, she doesn't see the man she married out of desperation. She sees the man who held her hand in the dark, the man who is trying to remake himself, the man she has fallen in love with, despite every reason not to. I'm staying, she says. Something breaks open in his expression. He reaches for her, cups her face in his hands. Clara, I'm staying, she repeats. Not because of an arrangement, not because of obligation, because I choose to. I choose you, Dominic Corsetti. All of you. Even the parts you're ashamed of. The kiss, when it comes, is everything their wedding day was not. It is tender and fierce and full of promise. It is the beginning of something real. When they finally separate, Dominic rests his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you, he murmurs. Then spend the rest of our lives earning it. He laughs, actually laughs, a sound Clara has never heard from him before. It transforms his face, makes him look younger, lighter, almost joyful. Deal, he says. The attack comes 6 weeks later. Clara is in the foundation office with Elena, reviewing proposals for a new community center, when she hears the first shot. The sound is distant, but unmistakable. Elena's head snaps up, her face going pale. Get down, she says. More shots. Shouting. The distant crash of glass breaking. Elena pulls Clara under the desk, her hands steady despite the terror in her eyes. Stay here. Don't move, no matter what you hear. Clara's mind races. Dominic was supposed to be across the city today meeting with federal contacts about the final stages of legitimization. Is he safe? Is Marco with him? The door bursts open. Clara's heart stops. But it's not an enemy. It's Marco. Blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, his expression grim. We need to move. Now. He pulls Clara and Elena from under the desk, guides them through hallways Clara doesn't recognize. Somewhere below she hears more fighting, men shouting in Italian, the sounds of impact and struggle. What's happening? Clara demands. The Marchettis. They moved faster than we anticipated. They've breached the eastern perimeter. Dominic. He's on his way. He was warned. But we can't wait for him. Marco pushes them through a door that leads to a garage Clara didn't know existed. 3 cars wait, engines already running. They pile into the middle vehicle. Marco floors the accelerator before the doors fully close, and they rocket through an underground tunnel that opens onto a side street. The next hours are a blur. Safe. Houses. Encrypted phone calls. The constant crackle of radios carrying voices Clara can't quite understand. She sits in a sterile room with concrete walls and no windows, Elena beside her, waiting for news that doesn't come. When Dominic finally appears, Clara doesn't think. She runs. He catches her, wraps his arms around her so tightly she can barely breathe. He is dirty, exhausted, and there is a dark stain on his sleeve that she doesn't want to examine too closely. But he is alive. He is here. I thought, she starts. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They hold each other in that underground room while the world above them burns. The aftermath is a blur of meetings and decisions. The Marchetti attack failed to achieve its primary objective, whatever that was, but it exposed vulnerabilities that Dominic cannot ignore. For days he is locked in strategy sessions with Marco and his closest advisors, planning responses Clara is not privy to. She doesn't push. She understands now that there are aspects of this life she cannot change, only accept, but she also refuses to retreat to ignorance. I want to help, she tells Dominic one evening. Whatever I can do. I'm not a soldier, but I'm not useless either. He considers her for a long moment. The foundation, he finally says. Elena could use support, and I want you protected by work that matters, not just hidden away. It's not what Clara expected, but it makes sense. Throwing herself into the foundation's work gives her purpose. It also shows the world and the Marchettis that the Corsetti family is not cowering. They are building. The weeks that follow are intense. Clara works alongside Elena to fast-track the community center project, turning it into a symbol of the family's commitment to positive change. They hold a groundbreaking ceremony that draws media attention and public goodwill. For the first time, the Corsetti name appears in headlines for something other than scandal. Meanwhile, Dominic works his own angles. Federal contacts receive information about Marchetti operations that Clara suspects has been carefully curated for maximum impact. Investigations open. Assets freeze. The family that tried to force the Corsettis back into darkness finds themselves under a spotlight they cannot escape. It's not violence that defeats them. It's exposure. When the news breaks that key Marchetti figures have been indicted on federal charges, Clara watches from the living room of the mansion, Dominic beside her. "Is it over?" she asks. "This chapter," he says, "there will always be others who want what we have, who hate what we're becoming. But the Marchettis," he shakes his head, "they're finished." Clara leans into him, exhausted and relieved in equal measure. They have survived. More than that, they have prevailed without becoming what they were fighting against. "Your mother would be proud," she says quietly. Dominic doesn't respond immediately. When he does, his voice is thick, with emotion. "I hope so." 1 year to the day after their wedding, Clara stands in the garden of the Corsetti estate, surrounded by roses in full bloom. So much has changed. The mansion no longer feels like a gilded cage, it feels like home. The staff, who once regarded her with polite detachment, have become friends, allies, family. The man she married out of desperation has become the man she cannot imagine living without. The terms of their original arrangement have long since become irrelevant. They never discussed divorce. By the time the year was up, the word had stopped existing in their vocabulary. Instead, there was a different conversation, one that happened on a quiet evening in the library, when Dominic took her hand and asked if she would marry him again. Not for arrangement, not for appearances, for love. The ceremony is small, just as the first one was, but everything else is different. This time, the church is filled with flowers. This time, music swells from a full orchestra. This time, when Clara walks down the aisle, she is not trembling with fear, but radiant with joy. Dominic stands at the altar in a new suit, but his expression is what transforms him. Gone is the controlled mask. In its place is something open, vulnerable, full of wonder that this is his life now. When the priest asks if they take each other, their voices ring out clear and certain. "I do." The kiss that seals their vows is witnessed by everyone who matters. Marco, wiping tears, he will later deny. Elena, beaming with satisfaction. Clara's mother, clutching Emma's hand, both of them weeping openly. The staff of the mansion, the federal contacts who have become unexpected allies, a family forged from chaos and choice. At the reception, held in the gardens Clara has come to love, Dominic rises to make a toast. "1 year ago," he begins, "I married a woman I barely knew, as part of an arrangement I thought was purely practical. I told myself it was business. I told myself it would remain separate from my heart." Laughter ripples through the crowd. Everyone can see how spectacularly he failed. "What I didn't understand," Dominic continues, his voice softening, "was that some people change everything just by existing. Clara walked into my world of shadows and brought light I didn't know I was missing. She faced my enemies without flinching. She demanded truth when I offered convenience. She chose to stay when walking away would have been safer." He turns to look at her and Clara's breath catches. "I don't deserve the love you've given me, I know that, but I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it. To you, Clara Corsetti, my partner, my conscience, my heart, I love you." More than I knew was possible. The applause that follows is thunderous, but Clara barely hears it. She is moving toward her husband, pulled by a force stronger than gravity. When they kiss again, it feels like coming home. The months that follow bring more changes. The Corsetti Foundation grows, funded by the legitimate businesses that now form the entirety of the family's empire. The community center opens to celebration and acclaim. Elena expands the scholarship program, sending dozens of students to college who could never have afforded it otherwise. Clara's mother and sister move into a house on the edge of the estate, close enough to visit daily, but with their own space and independence. Emma flourishes in a new school, her future finally secure. And then, on a morning that begins like any other, Clara discovers she is pregnant. She tells Dominic in his study, interrupting a meeting she probably shouldn't interrupt. But some news cannot wait. The look on his face, the shock, the joy, the terror, the wonder, is something she will remember forever. "Are you sure?" he manages. "Very sure." He stands, moves toward her like a man approaching something sacred. "A child," he whispers. "Our child. Our child." When he takes her in his arms, she can feel him trembling. This man who has faced down threats and enemies without flinching is undone by the idea of becoming a father. "I'm terrified," he admits. "Me too," Clara says, "but we'll figure it out together, the way we figure out everything." The pregnancy is smooth, the months passing in a blur of preparation and anticipation. The nursery is decorated in soft yellows and greens, neutral colors that seemed safe for a future they cannot quite imagine. Baby clothes accumulate in drawers. Names are debated, discarded, debated again. When the day finally arrives, Clara's labor is long but uncomplicated. Dominic stays by her side through every hour, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, looking more frightened than she has ever seen him. And then, in the quiet of early morning, their daughter is born. She is small and perfect, with dark hair like her father, and eyes that Clara is certain will be her own green. When the nurse places her in Clara's arms, the world narrows to this single miraculous moment. "Hello," Clara whispers. "Hello, little one. We've been waiting for you." Dominic leans close, his face wet with tears he doesn't try to hide. "She's beautiful," he breathes. "She's absolutely beautiful." They name her Lucia, after Dominic's mother. The name means light, and it fits her perfectly. Lucia transforms them. She transforms Dominic, who becomes softer, more present, more prone to laughter. She transforms Clara, who discovers depths of love she never knew existed. She transforms the household, filling it with sounds and energy that had been missing for too long. But more than that, she transforms their understanding of legacy. "I used to think legacy was about power," Dominic tells Clara one evening, watching Lucia sleep in her crib. "About what you could build, what you could control, but that's not it. Legacy is this: a child who will grow up knowing she is loved. A world that is better because we chose to make it so. People whose lives are different because we cared enough to help." Clara rests her head on his shoulder. "Your mother would be proud." "I think she would." He pauses. "I think she would love you too." "Then I wish I could have known her." "In a way you do. Every good decision I make, every moment of compassion I manage, that's her influence. It's in my blood. And now it's in Lucia's too." They stand together in the nursery, watching their daughter breathe, feeling the weight and the wonder of everything they have built. The Corsetti name has been rewritten, not with force but with patience, not with fear, but with love. The empire that once operated in shadows now operates in light. The family that was feared is now respected. And Clara Mitchell, who accepted a separation on her wedding night with tears in her eyes, has found something she never expected: home. If you've watched this far, it's because you liked this story. Leave a comment saying, "I've watched this far," so I can get to know you and see who really enjoys the stories here on the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Every week brings new stories of redemption, love, and transformations that will stay with you long after the credits roll. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear that hope can bloom in the most unexpected places, like this video, so more people can discover it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Until the next story, remember, sometimes the greatest love begins with the most improbable circumstances, and sometimes what feels like an ending is really just the beginning.